Canadian industries, the steel and aluminum industries, have been really hard hit by the so-called Section 232 tariffs. That are the tariffs that he imposed as a rationalizing them with a national security, saying that it was important for the security of the United States to build up its steel and aluminum production and cut off some of these foreign competitors that are coming in. But there's a growing concern, according to the Financial Times, within the Trump administration that this is having an inflationary effect on consumer prices, particularly on certain categories of things. Really, aluminum, aluminum cans, of course, beer, pop, those kinds of things, packaging, tinfoil, pie plates. These are all products that are being directly affected by this. And the price of aluminum has really climbed recently because of these tariffs. So now, according to the Financial Times, the Trump administration is considering taking the tariffs off certain products, not a blanket removal of the steel and aluminum tariffs, but sort of an individualized one focusing on certain goods that are being most affected. And as I say, of course, inflation is really the concern here for Donald Trump. Although we did get some new inflation numbers out of the United States today, a little bit inflation slowing down a little bit faster than expected. So a 2.4% inflation rate year over year in the month of January. That is down just slightly from the previous month in December, but it is a good sign, a good trend line. However, there are still a lot of concerns about how these tariffs are affecting consumers and ultimately affecting voters, because the midterm election, of course, is coming up in November, and this is a real key inflection point for the Trump administration. So the thinking is he might start peeling back some of these tariffs now. Whether or not that will mean further reduction on tariffs in Canada, hard to say. We know Trump, over the past week or so, has made multiple threats to impose new tariffs in Canada, including those linked to his concerns about the Gordie Howe International Bridge that will ultimately connect Windsor, Ontario with Detroit, Michigan, sort of a parallel bridge, the Ambassador Bridge that have been there for almost 100 years. But Trump looks like he's kind of backed off that threat now, because some of the claims he made when he was threatening that aren't supported by reality. In fact, Canada paid in its entirety to build that bridge. And once it's paid back for that initial investment, the profits from the tolls charged to vehicles crossing the bridge will be split equally between the government of Canada and the state of Michigan. So it's a little hard to see where he's going with this. There is a sense, overall, that Trump is losing steam. We had this vote on Wednesday this week when Congress voted in favor of a resolution that would basically declare the Trump's fentanyl tariffs. Those are the first rounds of tariffs that he put in place shortly after his inauguration on Canada, Mexico, and really the rest of the world. But the ones on Canada, Congress voted to invalidate those. It still has to be voted on in the Senate and will ultimately go to Trump's desk and he can effectively veto it. Toss it in the garbage really won't have any meaning. So it's more of a symbolic victory for Congress, but it does show that Republican members of Congress are really turning on Trump on this sort of signature part of his economic plan. And now it's looking like Trump may do what they call TACO. That is, Trump always chickens out is the acronym that's being used, how he threatens these tariffs and then ultimately backs down. We'll see over the next couple of days whether or not Trump actually does back down on some of these steel aluminum tariffs, or whether he is encouraged by the inflation data today. There's other data out yesterday from the Federal Reserve of New York that shows that U.S. businesses and consumers are paying about 90% of the cost of tariffs. Of course, Trump has repeatedly claimed that it's the foreign countries that are paying the tariffs. Any economist will tell you that is absolute bunk. It's not true, and now there's data to show it. We'll see soon whether or not this actually results in a change of policy on tariffs on steel and aluminum that have been so punishing to Canada's economy.